everybody. Thanks for joining our session, which is called Call My Agent after the phenomenal Netflix show about the world of agents. These guys will stop at nothing to get their clients what they want. And we are here to help you figure out how to break into the industry. Right now is a very difficult time to get a start, but at the same time, disruption is good. Like people think about doing things in different ways. So to start, I'm going to ask my panelists how they got their starts. Ben, let's start with you. How did you begin your career, and did you ever think that you would end up where you are right now?
Well, first off, thanks so much for having me. Um, I've had a simple career path in some ways. I've always been a really big music lover. I grew up studying music, playing in bands. When I was a child, all throughout high school and into college. But I never really expected to work in the music industry until I joined my school's concert committee. Some of you may have these too, but we had a budget allocated to bring artists to our campus, and we were responsible for booking that talent with agents, marketing the shows, producing them, doing everything that went behind the scenes to make a show happen. And I really, really enjoyed doing that. So much so that when I was approaching graduation, I decided to sort of use some of the contacts that I had built up with agents that I had worked with to seek out opportunities when I graduated. And I ended up getting an internship at CAA in our Nashville office um, after I graduated. And I was sort of a combination of receptionist and floater and mailroom clerk. Anything that anyone needed, I did. And my goal at that time was to try to become an assistant. Um, an assistant positions opened up. I worked for a junior agent for about a year and a half. Then I ended up working for the department head as his assistant. Um, I then got promoted to our agent trainee program, was an agent trainee for about a year and a half, and then eventually got promoted to agent about 5 or 6 years after I started at CAA. So I've been fortunate enough to only ever have one job, um, but it's been a great ride.
Was it difficult to get that very first step, to get that very first internship at CAA? I imagine the competition is really intense, but you mentioned you had all those connections already through things that you did at college. Did they open the door for that very first opportunity? Did you have to apply to a program?
Yeah, I mean, I reached out to nearly every agent that I worked with seeking out opportunities, and I ran into a lot of closed doors. Um, but I tried to be persistent without being overbearing and really tried to showcase my passion and desire to work in this field. And I was really lucky in that I had somewhat of a working relationship with some people. So I think that gave me a leg up. Um,
So the
but
lesson there is like try everybody and be persistent.
yeah, I mean, know that not everyone will get back to you, and that's okay. But if you continue to try, eventually someone will, and those are probably the people that you want to be working with anyway.
Great. Regina, tell us about how you got your start.
My started as an agent. I had a very circuitous path. I started out as an engineer and then worked in the publishing industry as a sales rep, and I was helping to sell engineering textbooks. And then the company that I was working for was John Wiley and Sons, and they moved me to New York after 9 months, and I became an editor. And as an editor, I was working on engineering books. I was doing mechanical engineering and aerospace engineering, electrical engineering. And then I left John Wiley and Sons. Loved that company, but I left John Wiley and Sons and then went on to McGraw-Hill and was working in computing books. And then I left there and started my agency, and it's been 21 years now.
Wow.
So it
And tell
was
people a
very,
little bit about your educational background. You know about aerospace. You're a very unusual character in that you have this kind of sciencey background too. And show us the rocket you have on the desk there.
sure. So I'm very much into aerospace engineering. I love to fly. I have
Love that.
my little rocket. Um, I I felt very fortunate to be able to get into publishing, because going from engineering into publishing, it's not a straight line. I always say that I've had lots of curves and angles as it relates to my path into publishing. And I think that especially now for young people, a lot of people are not even thinking in lines like we used to. It's like, okay, you do this first, all these steps. People love to bypass the steps these days. So I think that it's a very good time for being able to do that.
Yeah, I like what Ben said too. Like, you have to be willing to do anything, right? At the very
Yeah.
beginning, you can't be too proud to get the coffee. I mean, obviously, nobody wants to do that forever, but you have to do the grunt work at the beginning. And so let's turn to Cara. Tell us how you began Avalon.
Sure. Similar to Ben, I've basically just had like one job. I think for me, and I definitely agree, like just asking everyone and being willing to do stuff at the beginning of your career and being open-minded to everything is super, super important, because I had what I do now, I literally didn't know it existed when I started. And so my advice is sort of like focus on like what you want to do. My focus was comedy, and I just wanted to do comedy. I knew I didn't want to be a performer, and I knew I didn't want to be a writer, but there was something about comedy that I wanted to be involved with. So that really helped me to sort of just like pick people's brains when I came across different opportunities in that space. And really it started, I went to Temple University, which is a very communications heavy school, and I did my internship at NBC, and I got really, really lucky that I got put into this program. I remember starting out, I was like the one person in my department, and I was like, oh my God, this is awful, because the Conan interns, there was like 60 of them, and there were Carson Daly, I think, was still on the air like in New York, and I was like, oh my God, I'm all by myself. But what that allowed me to do is like I really got this like immersive opportunity to work for this thing called PSNBC, which was called Performance Based NBC, and it was a part of their East Coast casting department, and it was a place to develop uh, various sort of actors, comedians, whatnot. So basically they ran this like theater program that was 4 nights a week, and I helped produce the shows, and we did things like stand-up showcases, and we did things like, I mean, I'm pretty old, so this is like 20 years ago, and they were doing diversity showcase. I remember we did like a Asian actor showcase, and I saw from that like you didn't really sort of have to like have much to sort of like see it go all the way through. So one of the people that we had on there was Judah Freelander, and then cut to 7 years later, he was a star on 30 Rock. So that's where I started. And then from there, it was just like everyone I met, I'd just be like, hi, I'm Kara. I'll work for you for like free, basically. And like people were always like, what's your first job in LA? And mine was Bed Bath and Beyond in West LA. And I lived like on the East Side, which was the worst thing I possibly could have done to myself because my commute was awful. But I, through that, just kind of just kept asking and just PAing and just doing a bunch of like, lame jobs. But I met a lot of people and I networked a lot. And I try to instill that in like the managers in our group now, that I'm like, yeah, look, have your client write a script. You want your client to sell a show, you want them to star in this, you want that, but networking, get to know everyone. And sometimes you're really lucky and you get to become friends with somebody that eventually will become like the president of a network, or it will just open up opportunities for yourself and for your clients. And so I moved to LA, and for like a year I did PAing. I PA'd on like the Vibe Awards, I PA'd on like Comedy Central shows. I did so many. I was like an extra on this like History Channel show way too many times. And that just talking to people got me to Avalon. And the honest truth is I needed healthcare. And so I just kind of took a swing at a full-time job at what I was like management. I don't know what that is, but they seem to be cool. And then from there, I've just like grown. And it's been, that's sort of the gist of it.
Just one additional question. How did you get that first internship at NBC? Was that through the course that you did at Temple?
No, I think it was I just applied to like everything.
You just applied yourself.
find online, like every single thing. And I got really lucky that, yeah, my mom drove me from Boston to New York for my interview with her girlfriend. And like, I just was like, I think the thing is too for myself, like being, an Avalon for 15 years and like seeing young kids, like if you're excited, like show that enthusiasm, be eager. Cause this is a really hard business, but it's really fun. And it's like, you just got to sort of like come in and just be like, I'm down to do anything, and it'll make, the tough days like way easier. So I think from the it's like, pour it on. Don't worry so much about, the sort of form letters and, being super, super, formal, and just show a lot of like yourself. And I think that's like, because I was like, I just love comedy and I'm a comedy nerd, that shined through in different conversations that I had, and like, without getting into every single little beat, that is what ultimately got me to my place, is just being like, I don't know, I just consume all this stuff, I know about it, and then it'll get you to where you're sort of like meant to be.
Yeah, I love that you represent Rob Delaney. He's just so
Oh,
funny.
thanks.
One of my
He's
favorite.
a delight.
He is.
He's such a delight.
Great.
Really
Jaya, let's hear from you. How did you get your start?
Sure. So I always knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, went to undergrad in upstate New York at Colgate University, and then law school in Washington, D.C. at the George Washington University Law School. And so I think since high school, I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I wasn't planning on being an entertainment lawyer. My goal was to be a civil rights lawyer. But my second year of law school, I got an internship working for the TV show Dateline. And I just really loved it. I loved being in the studio. I loved going out on shoots. I just thought it was really fun and exciting. So I decided to change my focus to media and entertainment, and kind of kept that focus throughout law school. But once I graduated from law school, I got a job working at a large law firm in New York City that didn't do anything entertainment related. So I was basically doing civil litigation at a firm in New York City, not doing anything entertainment. And after being there for a few years, I just kind of had this itch to really try to get into the entertainment space. And so, I was just thinking, like, if I wanted to get entertainment, do I stay in New York or do I go to Los Angeles? And I figured if I really want to get into entertainment, I need to be in LA. And so I ended up quitting that job at the law firm and just bought a one-way ticket to Los Angeles. Didn't have a job when I moved to LA. Didn't know anybody. I didn't know one person in LA when I moved. Didn't have a car, nothing. Just bought a one-way ticket and moved to LA. And I was like, I'll just figure it out when I get to LA, which I did, luckily. And when I got to LA, I actually decided to go back to school. And I did a truncated program at UCLA. It was like a 6-week program on television and film, because I figured I kind of know the legal side of things, but I don't really know how the industry works. And going back to school and taking this 6-week program helped me to understand how a TV show is made, how a film is made, all of the logistics that go on, in that space. So I went back to school, did the 6-week program, and this was an evening program. So I had to figure out, what am I going to do during the day? Ended up just cold calling a ton of places. And one of the places I cold called was Will Smith's production company, Overbrook Entertainment. Just cold called them out of the blue, introduced myself, asked for like an informational interview, got it. And that was my first position, my first job once I got to LA, working for Will during the day, going to school at night. And so I did that for a while, and fast forward to today, I now have my own practice focused on TV, film, and sports.
Great. That's a phenomenal story. I love it. You just called Will Smith. That shows initiative and passion. So I just want to touch on what everybody actually does, because I know as a newcomer to the industry, I knew what journalists do, but I didn't know what scriptwriters do. I didn't necessarily know that if you're a celebrity, you have an agent, a lawyer, a manager. Jayas, can you tell me a little bit about what an entertainment lawyer actually does? What kind of things do you focus on?
Sure, great question. So the first thing is first thing I want to kind of discuss is just like the term entertainment lawyer, because that's a really big word. And sometimes when people hear the word entertainment lawyer, they think it just means you do anything in the entertainment space. And most entertainment lawyers have very specific lanes and very specific areas that they focus on. My area is television and film. Some attorneys just do music. Some attorneys just do fashion. So most entertainment attorneys have their own like specific area they focus on. But in my day-to-day, a lot of what I do is reading contracts. So a lot of my clients, when they are presented with contracts from networks, from studios, my eyes are on those contracts, negotiating them, reading them, reviewing them, and trying to get the best deal for my clients. So that's the bulk of what I do: negotiating deals, drafting contracts, and reviewing contracts. Another big part of my job is with regards to intellectual property. So these are ideas, these are books, these are scripts that my clients write. And I spend a lot of time making sure that their work is properly protected. Their intellectual property is registered with the Copyright Office, the Trademark Office. So I also spend a lot of time doing that. And then I also spend a lot of time incorporating businesses for my clients. A lot of my clients have outside interests outside of, just being on a show or on a film. They have other businesses, they have other ventures. And so I spend a lot of time, helping incorporate those companies, helping to oversee them and make sure that everything is legally sound. But different entertainment attorneys do different things. Some attorneys, they're in court all day, they litigate. That's not what I do. I'm a transactional lawyer. But there are some entertainment attorneys, when you read about celebrities going to jail, getting arrested, that's what some entertainment attorneys focus on. It's not my lane, but, entertainment attorneys do a lot of different things.
Got it. Great. Ben, how about you? What does your day-to-day look like? Obviously, music touring right now is in a challenge space, but give us a bird's eye view of what you do at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the live industry is on pause right now. We hope it comes back soon. But big picture, what I do as a music agent is to help create and execute a touring strategy for the artists that I work with. And that's doing so with the artists themselves as well as their managers. So day to day, is the implementation of that. And being in constant communication with venues, promoters, festivals around the country, as well as the artists that we work with and their managers. Just as much external communication as I have internal communication with my colleagues. We have a really incredible roster of artists that we represent, and we are all looking out for opportunities for not only the acts that we individually work on, but the entirety of the roster. So one of my roles within my job is I help book festivals across the country, and I'm booking everything from the first act of the day on the stage to the headliner, and doing that for all of the acts that CA represents. So there's that piece of it, and then there's also connecting my clients with opportunities outside of music, be it in film, TV, theater, brand partnerships. I think so many creators these days are multi-hyphenates and want to do more than just stay in their lane. And so many musicians have ambitions outside of being a successful touring act. So that's sort of the third piece of the puzzle.
So you're probably a good person to explain what's the difference between an agent, a manager, a lawyer, and why somebody would need all these different people.
Sure. And I think, the other participants on the call can speak to it from their perspective. I think the relationship is different in music than it is in comedy and TV and in books, I'm sure. But at least from my perspective, as music agents, we, overlook or oversee touring, whereas a music manager works most directly with the artists and not only, helps to oversee touring, but is a liaison with the artist record label, their publishing company, sort of all the spokes in the wheel. Whereas I primarily focusing on touring.
Yeah. Regina, I just want to tell you that I can't wait to read your book. You should really write a book. That's a great piece of advice. Tell me what your day-to-day looks like. Are you reading scripts? Tell me, are you
My
getting
day,
tips?
my day is very multivariate. I mean, as a literary agent, there are a number of things we're responsible for. Uh, when people send me query letters with the hopes that we will be able to champion their book and get them a book deal. So the first thing we're doing is reading query letters and then ultimately reading the manuscripts for those books. And then once we make the decision that we're going to be an advocate for this property and or for this author, we then negotiate a contract with the author, indicating that we're going to represent them. And then the process is kind of meet with publishers, making sure that we have a full understanding of the kind of books that they're interested in. And we have lots of meetings with publishers, editors. Once the book deal actually happens, then I negotiate the contract for the book. So similar to Jaya, I'm sitting with contracts often. In fact, that was a significant part of my day to day. And then also once the book gets picked up, I'm also helping to negotiate between the editor. I'm like a mediator between the editor and the author to make sure that my author's needs are being met, whether that be, helping them to identify the best cover for their book, or making sure that the marketing and publicity plans for their titles are being implemented properly. The other thing I do is book to film. So I'm taking the author's the rights for the book and trying to sell it in as many different areas and ways as I can, whether that be licensing agreements or book deals from book to film or book to television, even now book to podcast. So so those are some of the things that we do. And I travel a lot as well. I pre-pandemic, I usually speak at about 30 conferences a year. And so both domestic and international, just helping authors understand the business and also how to get their books published. And I also help with craft. So if you send me a manuscript and I love it, but it still needs some work, I'm actually helping to edit the manuscript as well before it's shopped.
Yeah,
So
and you're looking for talent too with the magnifying glass, right?
That's right.
Show us the magnifying glass.
All right. Yeah, I have this little thing. One of my tagline is unearthing gems. And so I use this little thing sometimes at conferences to show that I'm trying to unearth the gems. And there's a lot of talent out there when it comes to writing. And so I think Ben was talking about the fact that a lot of his clients are trying to do other things. And I find that I work with a lot of celebrities and influencers, and I also partner them with writers. So they might have a really great idea, but writing is not their, forte. So we end up partnering them with a writer, and I help them ideate ideas too about what would be a good book for them.
Got it. And Cara, tell us about your day to day. And I'm also interested to know, like, how has this year been different? How has the pandemic changed how you operate? Obviously, a lot of productions in Hollywood are shut down, or they're waiting to restart, or they're affected by COVID in some way. Can you talk about first, what you do day to day, and then like how that's changed this year?
Yeah, I mean, my day to day varies quite a bit. I think that the big difference between the sort of manager and agent is that and Ben sort of touched upon this, and I actually usually say that like a lit agent like Regina, I always joke that like they're the most managerial agents, because I feel like the book process requires a lot more hands-on. So my job is to really oversee like everything and sort of strategize. I'm kind of the nucleus, and especially the sort of folks that I represent, I have a very small roster, and everyone is a multi-hyphenate. Everybody does like a little bit, does stuff that's like a little bit different. Comedy is sort of the through line, but some people are more speakers, some people are stand-ups, a lot of authors, a lot of TV writing, some feature writing, but like that could just be one client. I've like literally done everything from like board games to TV shows to movies, whatnot. And so really it's my job to kind of like make sure that everything is on track and that we're setting goals. And then I communicate between the publicist, the lawyer, the agents. Like I work a lot with a lot of agents that work in like the personal personal appearances space and the comedy space, and then speaking agents a lot at Ben's colleagues actually at CAA. I have quite a few clients over there, and it's my job to kind of keep everything on track and everything on time. So it's just like a bigger, sort of thing. And it's the other distinction is that as a manager, you're able to produce with your clients. So there is like this, inherent partnership between the artist and the manager. And I get really creatively involved, and I sort of see things from like, when it's like a really, really sort of kernel of an idea, usually I'll sort of form it with the client and then go to the agent and say, hey, we have this thing, have them sort of weigh in. And then, the team gets bigger from there. I mean, at the end of the day, when you go from like idea for a TV show to an actual TV show, you start with like 2 or 3 people, and then you're ending up with like 300 people. So, and just kind of along the way, sorry.
Are you herding cats?
A little bit. And along the way, part of my thing is like really, I think one of the things that we do at Avalon is like a big thing for us is like taste. And I think one of the things that goes along with that, of course, it's sort of the point of view of the artist, but it's also making sure that like the person, the set designer that's coming in, if it's a client show that they created themselves, like is on their vision. So the agent should be on their vision, the publicist should be on their vision, and just making sure that like I feel like part of my job is being that nucleus and making sure that as the team networks out and webs out, that everyone that's coming on board is there for that person's vision. So I think
how's this year been atypical? Tell me about dealing with the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, at this point it's been so long, I like kind of forget how I function like in the real world. I think things are a little bit slower, but it ebbs and flows. I had one client whose business dropped harder, went to like $0 right like in March and April when it started. And he's a writer. He wrote the book, the New York Times bestseller, How to Be Black. His name is Baratunde Thurston. And then as the Black Lives Matter movement saw, just sort of coming back around and everything. And that sort of helped him to come back into play, and his business just caught fire from there. And it's a thing that he'd been doing all of these speaking engagements, and his book came out 7 years ago, and he was like ready for this like moment. And so capitalizing on that. So it's like what I was doing with Baratunde on April 1st and what I was doing with Baratunde on August 1st, they're like radically different. And it's still some of the same things where you're just trying to sort of look big picture. What are we doing? Are we doing books? Are we doing movies? Are we meeting the right people and whatnot? But it's just a little bit harder because I think everything's a little bit slower. Like my assistant's not down the hall. I can't just like yell. So it's like every transaction is like a little like there's like one more step to it. But I think that we're coming out of it. Our company, we have quite a few shows. I think there's like, I don't want to speak out of turn, but like something like 5 to 7 productions over there. And we just wrapped one production for Freeform here. So like things are, starting to resemble the old days, just a little bit slower.
Yeah. And let's just briefly touch on diversity. Are we seeing a change? Are people more conscious about what kind of projects people of color are getting? How
100%.
is it? Yeah. It's really on the mind.
I'm seeing it. Sorry. I'm noticing that some of my like I have one of my clients is going to have an HBO late night series, and she is a Black woman, LGBTQ, and we haven't seen that before. And I think that like a lot of executives are acknowledging that those kind of voices have not been seen before. And I'm really like I think I'm noticing that it's people are paying attention to it, and a lot of my clients are getting opportunities that they didn't have before.
Jaya, do you want to jump in there?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I think it's important when we talk about diversity in the entertainment industry. A lot of times I feel like we just talk about it from the perspective of the talent. And we just talk about it from the perspective of, oh, is there more diversity with regards to the actors, the writers, the producers? But I think it's really important to also talk about, is there more diversity behind the scenes with regard to the executives, with regard to the agents, with regard to the managers? Because that's really, honestly, what's most important. And that's really what's going to push everything forward. If all the executives at these studios are white men, that's just going to slow up the process in terms of making sure there's more diversity across the board. And I've seen a little bit more diversity with regards to the talent side, but I think we still have such a long way to go with regards to making sure there's diversity behind the scenes with the executives, with the presidents of these companies, and even with representation with regards to, I want to see more Black managers. I want to see more Black agents across the board. And we're not quite there yet. And I think that space is moving a little slower than I would like.
And I would say in the publishing industry, we are starting to see some changes. Number one, some of the major publishers have started BIPOC imprints. So there's opportunities for people to move up. So in the industry, it's not uncommon for an editorial assistant to stay an editorial assistant for 3 years. What we found is that lately, I think within the last 6 to 9 months, a number of people who have been in the industry, they are starting to get higher positions. That's the first thing. The other thing is there's been a concerted effort for organizations that are affiliated within the publishing ecosystem to start to place a bigger focus on underrepresented authors and talent, as well as employees. So like, for example, I'm on the board of the Association of American Literary Agents, and we started an internship program as well as a mentorship program for people of color. And we also, there's the Association of Writing Programs, and they do a big conference. Their conference is going to be March 3rd through the 7th. They have allowed scholarships for underrepresented writers and authors to participate. So I think that similar to what Jaya was saying, it's important to have people behind the scenes, but it's also important to infuse money into the system so that people who do have talent and people who do have opportunity can take advantage of it.
Great.
And just to echo some of what's been said, I think especially in music, it's so important that the diversity of artists and their fans are represented and the people that represent them and in the industry. And I think, ultimately as agents, it makes us better at representing talent if we have, a team of diverse voices and people of color who can bring different points of view to any given project. I think it leads to more creativity and to better outcomes. Definitely something that I would like to see companies prioritize.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it's something for all people of all colors to keep in mind, right? And I think everybody would like to see diverse voices and different stories. And I think the lady in the sizzle reel had it right. We don't want to see the same stories with the same people. We want to watch and read different stories and different points of view in the entertainment industry. We're going to go to questions in a second, but I just wonder if everybody could give me a sentence on a piece of advice for newcomers. What would you tell your younger self about how to get in or how to thrive in this business? Ben, quick sentence from you before we hit the Q&A.
My 2 quick pieces of advice would be, don't worry about the title. If it's assistant, floater, or mailroom, just do whatever you can to get your foot in the door. And my second quick piece of advice would be also don't get too caught up on what your first role is, because it's much easier to transition from the job that you want from the job that you're in as opposed to from the outside.
Yeah. Cara, quick sentence.
I think just do what you love. Like, remember why you got into it. It's probably because you were 16 and you were watching something that spoke to you and that really interested you, and just remember that. And you don't need to compromise.
Absolutely. Regina?
I would say stay curious. And I say this because oftentimes I tell my staff, just when you think you know, think again. I feel like every 2 years I have to re-educate myself. So amongst the table, you might be an intern, but you're teaching me how to do certain things. So just when you think you know, think again and stay curious.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Jaya?
Two quick pieces of advice. The first is you don't have to have it all figured out right now. I know a lot of young people always think they have to have everything figured out and their path all figured out today. You don't have to have it all figured out today. And the second piece of advice is network. I can't stress the importance of building your network, building genuine relationships in this industry. They'll take you so far.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that at a time when maybe we can't get together, you can still network. I hear from people on LinkedIn all the time, Facebook, Twitter. You can be out there and, just getting in people's faces and letting people know, never be too proud to just kind of say, I'm here, I've got these skills, how can you help me? And I think you'll find that people at the top of the industry love hearing from newcomers and love giving advice. So, never be too proud to ask.
This question is for Ben. What advice do you have for students who want to be music touring agents?
I think, part of what I said previously, which is anywhere you can get your foot in the door, be it at an agency, a management company, with a venue or a promoter, is a great place to start. I mean, I'm biased in that I think working at an agency is a great thing to do from an entry level perspective, and that you're exposed to such a broad cross section of clients and opportunities. Speaking for CA specifically, we have an internship program, and students can find out about opportunities on ca.com/campus. But yeah, I mean, like I said previously, anywhere there's an opportunity in the music industry is a great place to start.
Was there any specific experience in your career where you felt left out because of your race or ethnicity? What inspired you to build a representation firm around diversity?
I can't think of like a specific incident that made me feel left out, but I will say just in general, in the entertainment industry, when it comes to entertainment lawyers, the image that pops into most people's mind when they think of an entertainment lawyer is like an old white man. They rarely think of like a young woman of color when they think about an entertainment attorney. And I've just heard a lot of comments like over the years throughout my career about, oh, I need a Jewish lawyer, or I need like, a white guy to represent me. And so that's always kind of been in the back of my mind, like how ridiculous that sounds. To the point that, a couple years I decided to start another company called Diverse Representation, really focused on increasing, the exposure and the hiring of Black agents, attorneys, managers, and publicists. Because what I was finding was a lot of people in the entertainment industry, they would say, well, I don't know, any Black agents, or I don't know any Black managers. And so I wanted to create a website that listed everybody so that no one could use the excuse anymore that they couldn't find one. Here's a free resource of everybody in the space that you can reach out to. But yeah, I can't think of like one particular incident. Just like throughout my entire career, I just always heard, oh, the best entertainment lawyers are like old Jewish men, and I just always like, that's ridiculous. So
Hi, my name is Sarah Maima, and I go to Ramapo College in New Jersey. And I know Jai was saying something about not really knowing where your place is or like what job you want, and I've definitely felt that. But what kind of job would you recommend right now for someone who's in the media field, just with COVID and everything, and trying to be open to opportunities?
I would start with assistant, is always like a good one. I just personally hired an assistant that like I did not interview face to face. I met her a long time ago. But I think assistant is such a great place to like learn. And in representation too, I don't know if everyone knows this, but like my assistant's on like every single phone call I like make. So she hears how I talk to people, and I talk to a lot of different people. So, if you're kind of not sure where to go, like starting at like an agency or a management company where people do a lot of different things, and being an assistant, you'll get exposed to so much, and you'll learn very quickly what you do and you don't like. And then you can kind of, if you're listening and you're like, oh, I love this stuff that lawyer's saying, like maybe you should be a lawyer, or I love what that like lit agent's saying, like, and you're like, oh, that's what you do, and you just sort of build the steps from there.
And the other piece of advice I would give is, maybe there's like a dream company you want to work for, or like a dream person you want to work for, and maybe when you go to their website you don't see any specific job openings at that time. that doesn't mean you can't create your own opportunity for that company or for that individual. I've seen a lot of people, young people, get really creative about creating opportunities for themselves. So keep that in mind as well. Even if you don't see a job opening, on somebody's website, don't let that stop you from just like reaching out to them and, offering yourself as a resource for the company and really trying to get your foot in the door. And I won't say the great thing about COVID, but the great thing about being in this virtual space right now is also, you don't have to physically be in Los Angeles. You don't have to physically be in some of these cities to take advantage of opportunities. So take advantage of this virtual space and, really try to look for opportunities like all over the country if you can.
We have another question.
Can I just say one thing? That's the thing is my assistant lives in New York and I we're in LA, right? And my old assistant who was on my desk for 4 years lives in Sacramento. So the kind of cool thing right now is that you could live with your parents and find a job and not have to move. So, use that as an advantage.
Yeah. The silver lining of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We have another question. I believe from Andrew.
Yes, hello. My name is Andrew McCants. I just graduated Brooklyn College. I apologize for my lighting. I know I look like a painting, but my question was, I'm interested in becoming a screenwriter, and I was wondering what steps can I take now that can help me get to that path that I want to be on. If anyone knows.
Who wants to take that?
I'll start a little bit. So I would say, one of the things that I do sometimes is I'm a part of an organization that people can submit their screenplays and we judge them and we give feedback on the screenplay. So if you have written anything, there are organizations that you can participate in that will have people vet what you've written and give you advice and feedback on that. So I would start there.
I think, just to build off of that, if you're thinking screenwriting for TV, most of the networks and a lot of the studios, they have different programs that you can submit to right out of college, and that can start your networking from the get. And I think the cool thing about this time is that if you can shoot something, go shoot something, and if you can get your friend that has a camera, shoot something and go submit it to festivals. And you could, Sundance is great and everything, but there's 1,000 festivals below that. And, people are, a huge thing about representation that I think is misunderstood is it's our job to find you guys, right? And so just get your stuff out there. And there's so many different ways, and just keep going, because the cream will always rise and people will be found. So just to
piggyback on that too, when you mentioned that the fact that it's important that for agents to find you, so use social media, because everyone's on social media looking for people. So if there's ways that you can build up your platform so that you're visible, people will find you and your content.
Yeah. Ines, you want to go ahead with your question next?
Yes. Hi, my name is Ines. I go to NYU, but I'm an international student. I was wondering your tips and tricks, I guess, to network, if there's any specific events that you would recommend, or taking the first steps into that networking world and how to start creating your contacts. Thank you.
Sure. I think, it's some of this has been said before, but if there's a artist whose work you really admire, and are able to find contact information about some of the people who work with them, I think it's always great to send passionate letters. But I think it's also smart to focus on networking opportunities for people who have entry-level roles. So whether you're able to get connected with people who maybe are assistants or who are receptionists, because I think they can give you really valuable advice as far as how they got their opportunity. They can serve as references, and they can often let you know when they hear of job openings too. And sometimes those are people that might be easier to connect to out of the gate than someone more senior. So certainly it can be really challenging in this time where we're all disconnected and online and virtual. But like we talked about at the beginning of the session, I think reach out to as many people as possible and you will get hits back.
Great.
And I can
Matilda?
piggyback off that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple of tips. You know, if any of you guys are planning on reaching out to, people to network, just a couple of things I've seen throughout my career is that if you do reach out to people, if you are sending a blind email to folks, I would just recommend be really succinct in that email about, who you are and, why you're looking to meet this person. I've seen some students send emails that are literally like 10 paragraphs and a lot of people are super busy, so they don't have the time to read through all that. Sometimes people are just really scanning through the email. And I would recommend just being very brief, concise, no more than a paragraph, really just kind of introducing yourself and, why you want to meet so-and-so is one piece of advice I would say. And then the other piece, if you are reaching out to people, follow up. Sometimes people won't get back to you the first time around. It's not because they're being rude, it's just everyone has really busy schedules. And so sometimes, they just forget, honestly. So don't be scared to follow up 2 or 3 times. I think 3 is the max, but I think follow up is really key as well because, everyone's just so busy these days. Sometimes, emails just kind of fall to the wayside by accident.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Matilda, what's your question?
Hi. So it's a really weird time, and I feel like it's a weird time to submit. Oh, I'm a drama major at NYU. Sorry about my voice. But since it's such a weird time to submit as an actor, what are some tips or what are the worst emails you've gotten or the worst times? Just your own experience with that. I know some of you don't work in the acting part of the business, but yeah, I'd love to listen to your advice.
I'll be totally honest with you. I mostly work with multi-hyphenates who also work. So I always I'm like, my boss and I, we were talking early this morning. We were like, I don't know how to pick out the next Julia Roberts. So I'm so bad at that stuff because I don't really totally know how you show off your acting skills. I know how you show your stand up and I know how you show your voice on Twitter and stuff like that. But for a dramatic actor, if I'm totally honest, I'm not 100% sure. I would maybe imagine just more acting programs.
Hi there. So I'm a writer and I work in comedy, and I wrote a script that I am meeting with a production house to hopefully sell this week, but I have no representation. I've never done this before. And I'm wondering if you guys have any advice for me as, to how I can do this without messing it up.
Just be careful. You probably aren't going to sell it to the production house, right? You'll sell it to the network. You want the producer to come on. I think that sometimes the steps are just kind of missed. So you want to meet with the producer and you want to make sure that they also see your vision and that they can elevate it and that they then can connect you to that buyers that actually have the money, right? So
it's called it's a film. They're called Epic Films is the name of the company, and so honestly I don't really know what I'm doing.
You pitching it? Are you pitching the project through Zoom, or are you happy to do it in person? Okay.
Yeah.
I would say prepare a deck if you can, and keep the deck very succinct, so that you can explain to the production company what the project is about, and just the key with those, especially on Zoom, is to make sure that they are very succinct and they'll be able to ask you questions afterwards.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for your talk. So my name is Rana. I'm a student at NYU. I'm currently double majoring in psychology and drama. But I also do a lot of songwriting and singing, and I know the industry is very competitive. There's obviously a lot of talented people out there. So what truly makes someone who is applying to talent agency, who is trying to stand out, actually stand out? And alongside that, I also had another question of, I've applied to quite a few talent agencies before, and I've realized some tend to be scams. So how do you know which one is actually real and which one you should kind of be careful of?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about how can you tell if an agency is real, or if it's a scam. I would just recommend doing your due diligence and doing your research. A great website to do that research is IMDb Pro. You can look up that agency, see some of the clients they represent, see if they are legit. And in terms of the agency side, one thing that I think really helps people get agency representation is through referrals. So if you have a friend, or a close colleague, or someone that you consider a confidant, who may be represented by a specific agency that you're looking to be represented by as well, it really helps a lot of times if someone can help broker that introduction for you, or make a referral for you to an agency.
And that might come in the form, because you're in school, that might come in the form of a professor, or it could be an alumnus from the school. And I'm sure that they have programs and, outreach for those type of things. And again, I'm big on social media. You can create a little kind of thing on social media, especially YouTube, because again, our goal is to try to find people. So if you're out there, we might find you.
We have a next question from Hannah.
Hi there. Yeah, my name is Hannah Groman. I'm a sophomore communications student at Drake University, which is in Des Moines, Iowa. So I'm not on the East Coast like everybody else. But I just had a quick question. I'm not super certain about what I want to do in the industry, but I know that I want to work with entertainment and communications. So I think career advice is usually pretty universal. So just what is the best career advice that you guys have received that you think is important to pass down to the next generation of communication professionals?
Be nice.
Yeah.
Be nice to people. Be respectful and be nice. That's my best advice that I've heard.
Yeah, just to echo what Kara said, I think once you enter any of these businesses, be it music or comedy or books, the industry starts to feel really small, and we all work with each other so much. So it's, I think, wise, beholden upon you to not treat any given interaction or negotiation like it's the last one, because we all work with each other so much. So if I had to give one piece of advice, it would be that.
I would say that you are as rich as your resources. So I don't focus so much at the beginning on how much money you're going to make, but think about how many people you're going to be able to meet in a given place that you are. And the resources that you are able to establish at any given place are going to you can take those resources with you anywhere. So remember that you're as rich as your resources.
Hey guys, I'm Nick. I'm a media and communications student at Drew University in New Jersey. And Carrie, you were saying at Temple, communications is such a huge program nowadays, and it's only gotten bigger. So my question for you guys is like, how does someone with a media and communications major really make their resume stand out from like the thousands of other ones?
I love your setup, Nick. Are you a broadcaster?
Only a little bit.
You have a great radio voice as well.
Oh, thanks very much.
Yeah, that's a good question. How the heck do you stand out when there's so much competition, and it's global competition too? It's not just, people in your city or people in America, everybody, it's a global industry, and, people want to break in from every four corners of the globe. Who can help Nick on that one?
I think we touched on some of these things before, but I think as much as you can identify what you're interested in working in, and then some of the companies that operate in that space, and be really passionate and be persistent, and showcase your desire and willingness to do anything to get your foot in the door. I think that's a good place to start. It is not easy to do. I think it's easy for us to make it seem easy. But the truth is, it's really hard to be searching for jobs when there's a lot of competition. But I think as persistent as you can be, you'll eventually get there.
And I'd like to say also, in your persistence, be innovative. So I remember, I look at resumes all the time, and the people that I remember are the people who were innovative in some way. And there's something to be said about really honing your craft. If I'm looking at 5 different resumes, sometimes I can tell by the resume itself, like which person has really spent the time to hone their craft. Whether that be taking extra courses, participating in volunteer opportunities, but it shows passion, but it also shows innovation. So those are some things I would encourage.
Hi, my name is Jordan. I'm a recent graduate from Gettysburg College, and my question's for Ben. I was wondering how often you get to go to your clients' concerts, because that seems like that'd be a fun perk of your job.
Well, in normal times, I'm out at shows 3 or 4 or 5 nights a week, sometimes traveling around the country to go see them. So the past almost year has been very bizarre, in that I haven't seen anything, and I'm home every night. But it is an absolute perk of the job to be able to see incredible performers, to go to festivals, to see an eventual superstar play in a tiny room for 150 people or 200 people, and sort of get that feeling like you're witnessing something before everyone else. So it's a huge perk of the job, and I really miss it.
Well, that's a good question. What are the other perks of folks' jobs? Jaya, what's the perk of being an entertainment lawyer?
One of the perks is probably, getting to go to my clients' screenings, premieres. I would say that's probably one of the biggest perks.
Kara, how about you?
Personally, it's really cool when you're on someone's like journey to their dream, and when you see that dream happen, and you're like, you have a like manager artist relationship tends to be pretty intimate, and when you're like, when you're standing there, you're like, holy shit, we did a show, we made a show, it's on TV, it's been nominated for stuff, like that's pretty awesome.
Regina, I guess that's somewhat similar for you too, right?
Oh gosh, one of the perks is free books. I get lots of free books. So if you're a bibliophile, this is a great job for you. And I think the other perk for me is the fact that I'm usually working with people who are going to be writing about things that are very cutting edge. So I tend to know things before the average person finds out about them. So I love that part. I sometimes consider myself a jack of all trades.
So I'm a recent graduate of Renpo College of New Jersey. And I guess I consider myself sort of a multi-hyphenate in terms of an artist, because past year I've released 2 albums of music. I have a poetry manuscript. I have a short film written. So I just have all these artistic things that I really gain all of my attention, but I feel like I have no like resume or business footing. So I want to know, is an agent like a good job for someone who considers themselves an artist, or should I just, I don't know, do something else?
So wait, your question is how to package all of that experience and kind of present it?
Is it relevant experience is there like a business side where you should really need to like know the ins and outs of like have a degree in business, or because my studies were really more, it was communications, but more geared towards like an artistic thing.
Yeah, I think maybe Jaya, that's a good one for you. Obviously, Ivo has a great resume and lots of experience. How does he kind of figure out how to think about the business side and monetize the craft?
I actually think Ben may be a better person to answer that from the agent side.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're interested in pursuing being a musician or a poet, then go for it. I also think that if you're interested in working on the business side, I think your creative background is completely irrelevant. I think obviously there's a lot of business to what we do, but so much of what we do is creative as well. And I think some of the most successful people have great taste and have a great point of view, and think like an artist, but are also hardworking and diligent and all of the things that it takes to take a vision and implement it. So if you want to be an artist, go be an artist. But I think that doesn't preclude you from working on the business side either.
And one other thing to tap into that is if you have good taste, you can also become kind of a curator of talent. So especially as it relates to poetry, you could create like a poetry night where you have people come in. And then if you at some point want to become an agent, you'll have your finger on the pulse of some of the best talent, at least in your area. So that's another way, another approach. And you can do the same thing with music.
A lot of the assistants that like have come up through like the comedy space have done things like what Gina's like talking about. Like I know a lot of people where they would just kind of get together with their friends and they would just produce comedy shows. And sometimes people would actually go up and try stand up. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And then also in our group, we've had a number of assistants, especially like do the improv classes at the UCB and like do all the stages and go up a couple times a week. And I don't think that they have to be like mutually exclusive. So, yeah, I feel like just do everything and then just kind of your path will sort of lead you in the right direction.
Hi, thank you everyone. My name is Grace. I go to Stanford University in California. And my question is, as someone who is interested in potentially working in the sort of agent, manager, entertainment lawyer area, but also maybe interested in going to law school, potentially maybe in or not in entertainment, would going to law school right out of college be a good idea, or would it be smarter to do internships and then maybe go to law school if I become more certain that I want to do entertainment law specifically?
Sure. So I think everyone's path is different. I have some friends who are lawyers who went straight through. I have some friends who are attorneys who took some time off and then went to law school. And I can't necessarily say, I see a big difference in terms of the trajectory of their career. For me, I went straight through undergrad to law school just because I wanted to get it over with. So I just wanted to hurry up and just, finish it all at once. But different people have different paths, and like I said, I haven't really seen a big difference in terms of attorneys who have taken time off versus attorneys who have gone straight through.
Is there any advice you have for cold calls? We personally don't really take them at Avalon. I mean, it just depends on like what what you're trying to get accomplished, right? Cold call for an internship, call everybody. Cold calls like for representation of like a script is going to be probably tough. Usually it's sort of based, like for us, we tend to sort of have it come through an agency or another way. Think about if you were on the other end of that conversation.
Honestly, I think social media is the new cold call, because that's the easiest way to kind of get to someone, either social media or LinkedIn. But to actually pick up the phone and try to call someone on the phone I think is a tough way to go right now.
I will say that if you're looking to get hired or get an internship, I think cold calling an agency or a management company or whatever it may be might also be a way to stand out in a world in which we're all emailing, and that can feel cold and less personal. So I think if you have an opportunity to make cold calls to HR and develop a relationship with them, that might be a great way to get a leg up.
So my question is sort of similar to Ivo's, but sort of different. So personally, I am really interested in podcasting. I have a little podcast. Don't really know like where, what I'm going to end up doing. But I was wondering if any of you have answers. If you've sort of grappled with like deciding if you want to like be the talent, like be the creative person, or be behind that, like how you all are. And I guess, how you figured that out, and if you do feel like you're able to be creative in this position as well.
That's a good question. Choosing sides, or maybe you don't have to choose. Maybe you can do both.
Well,
Regina, you're a writer.
I definitely do both. I'm a writer. I've written children's books. I write books on how to do certain things, whether it be write young adult books or how to write a memoir. So I believe, it's kind of a crazy time in terms of how you have, just like you guys are trying to figure out ways to stand out, we're trying to figure out ways to stand out as well. So whether that be creating content that will draw people in, or creating, I have on social media, I have a thing, a web series, so to speak, called Books by the Numbers. And so I answer questions, publishing questions, kind of frequently asked questions from a numerical perspective. And so I'm trying to think of ways to make sure that people understand how I think as an agent and figure out ways to kind of build my brand. And I think you can do the same thing.
Yeah, most people think about a lawyer. I'm sure that you probably just think, we're kind of sitting at our desk all day, looking at paperwork. And honestly, that is 95% of what we do. But even from an attorney side, I've definitely found ways to be creative, even as an entertainment lawyer. A couple years ago, I co-produced a movie with a filmmaker by the name of Matthew Cherry, who's a former football player and also just won an Oscar last year for his movie Hair Love. He was a client. He reached out to me and was like, hey, I think you'd be great as a co-producer on this movie. Let's work together on it. And I said, sure, I loved it. I love what he does. And so, started doing that, as well on the side. So there are definitely ways to be creative, in this space. And there are a ton of opportunities that you're always going to be presented with, that you can take advantage of in unique and different ways.
Anita wanted us to ask this on her behalf. She's wondering, this question's for Regina, and she's wondering if Regina's agency is currently offering internships or assistant entry-level positions.
I'm always offering internships. I have had as many as as few as one intern and as many as 7 interns at any given time. So and it's on a rolling basis. Right now, I currently have 3 interns. I'll have another set starting probably in May-ish. So absolutely, I'm always, and in fact, I have worked with Pace University's publishing program and have had several interns from that university. So yeah, send me your stuff.
Great. I think that probably winds things up. Thank you, Ben, Jaya, Regina, Cara, for your time. It's been amazing for me. I've been writing about this industry for a long time, but I've learned so much from just listening to you guys tonight. You've been so generous with your time. Folks who are listening in, this is recorded. It will be posted on the Center for Communications website. And we wish you all a good night. Thank you so much.